Hi, my name's Aaron Curry, and in today's video I'd like to share with you the 3 critical elements you need to have in your property portfolio to build a passive income of £50,000 a year within the next 2 years, regardless of your starting point. This is part of a 4-part video series, and this is video number 2. The housing market is about to crash. It's about to tank 5 to 10%. And for the savvy property investor that has the right education, this will be the best time to buy in over a decade, since the 2008-2009 crash. It's a massive opportunity. For the uneducated property investor, this is a really dangerous time. So in this video series, I'm going to prove to you and show you that anybody can build a property portfolio that makes them £50,000 per annum within 2 years, regardless of their starting point, provided they have the right education, the right support, and the right accountability. And I'm going to show you how to safely and securely build a property portfolio that will make you £50,000 per annum within the next 2 years. Now, in the first video in this series, I showed you why the housing market is about to crash. I shared all the economics of that and everything else. If you've not watched that video, somewhere around here, you'll see a link that you can click, and you need to stop this video right now, go watch video number 1 first. Go watch that video so you understand why this is going to happen. And you understand that you can safely and securely build a property portfolio in the best time to buy in over a decade that will make you £50,000 a year. Now, let's get stuck in this video, and to do that, what I want to do is share these 3 key elements. But before we do that, let me tell you a bit about my story. You see, I started to invest about 20 years ago now, okay? And 20 years ago, I'd quit my corporate job. I worked for Marks and Spencer's for a number of years. Great job, promotion every year, loved it, moved on to a new town or city. And I got to the point where I was getting promoted, job was going well, but I wasn't enjoying it so much anymore. The reason I wasn't enjoying it was because of all the moving. Every year to 18 months, you were getting moved on again. And I had somebody that I loved in my life, and they said, you know what, I can't keep doing this. I'm going to go back to Scarborough. I'm going to go live in Scarborough, which is where we were back then. And if you want to keep moving, that's fine. But if you want to be with me, you need to come back. So I quit my job and quit the corporate world and went to live in Scarborough. And at the time, I set up as a mortgage broker. I was kind of affiliated to a company, but I was set up as a mortgage broker. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Literally started with the yellow pages or the phone book, started ringing the letter A's, which, by the way, everybody else rings, don't they, as well? So everybody was ringing letter A. No one was ringing letter Z. Letter A were very unhappy I was ringing them. And I started trying to build my business. And suffice to say, within 6 months, I'd earned a total of £2,000. Now, I know this was 20 years ago, but £2,000 was not enough money. I was going backwards, not forwards. Life was not going great, okay? And back then, the business was kind of affiliated. It had been set up by a guy called Warren, and Warren was based out in Australia. So he had a really successful business in Australia. This was his English arm of it, and I was kind of linked into that subsidiary. And Warren was a millionaire through property, incredibly successful in business, and probably one of my first proper mentors, you know, back in the day. I didn't even know what a mentor was, but he was one when I look back. And Warren came over and visited the UK. We're kind of 6 months into this job, 6 months into not earning any money, and Warren turns up and comes to see me, to motivate me, to spend time with me. And we get in a conversation. I'm like, you know, this isn't going great. This isn't going great. And back then, the company had a mantra. It was about asset accumulation, getting more assets, debt reduction, getting your debts paid off, and improved lifestyle. And I love that mantra. I love that mantra. So Warren's saying, look, are you sharing this with our clients? Are you going out there teaching them about this stuff? And I'm like, I am. And he's saying, did you read that book I sent you? And I said, well, what book? And he said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Did you read it? And this book is a book that he sent me. And I'm like, well, Warren, I did read it, but you know, it talks about getting assets. It talks about building property. By the way, if you've not read the book, it's a great book. And it talks about building property. You know what I'm earning. I've earned £2,000 in the last 6 months. How can I possibly get assets? And he gave me one of my first killer lessons or first killer statements. He said, listen, Aaron, there's no such thing as a lack of resource. There's a lack of resourcefulness. And I'm like, struggling with this, which you may be doing right now. I'm like, what the heck does this mean? I'm like, I'm really sorry. What does that mean? He goes, you're saying there's a lack of money. You're saying there's a lack of the ability to get property because you've got a lack of money. He says you're not being resourceful enough. There's a lack of resourcefulness right now. There's not a lack of money. Everybody's got the same time in their lives. Everyone starts their life with the same money, zero. We all start from the same place. So we need to get resourceful in life, as resourceful as we can. So I get this quote from him and I'm like, that's amazing, okay? So now I'm racking my brain. He leaves and flies back off to Australia and I'm racking my brain. I'm like, who do I know with money? Who can I plug into with money to make this happen? And it takes me 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm like, I don't know anybody. I'm 26, 27 years old. I'm like, I don't know anybody. Who am I going to do this with? And suddenly one night, if you picture the scene, it's a Thursday night and it's kind of, I think it was October time, and outside it's dark, it's 7, 8 o'clock at night, and it's drizzling, it's raining, okay? And I'm kind of sat in my slippers in my front room on the sofa, a bit like you see me now. Very different sofa, very different house. And I'm sat on the sofa, I'm going, who do I know with money? And suddenly it comes to me. Suddenly it comes to me. One of the few people in the world that have been happy to use my mortgage services was Mark, my next door neighbour. Now, when you do somebody's mortgage, you do what's called a fact find. If ever you've got a mortgage, the broker will have done a fact find with you to find out all your information. And on my fact find, I'd asked Mark whether he had any savings. And sure enough, he told me he'd got about £100,000 of savings. So I'm suddenly like, Mark's got money, Mark's got money. Now, bear in mind, I knew Mark from over the fence. I'm talking 2 or 3 conversations as we parked our cars at night and gone into our houses. That was it. And I'd done his mortgage. So, but suddenly I'm like, Mark's got money, Mark's got money. And I don't have a clue what I'm doing, but 10, 15 seconds later, you'd have found me still in my slippers. I've run outside in the rain. I've jumped the fence. I think I was in shorts and t-shirt. I've jumped the fence and I'm knocking on his door. And I'm kind of salivating. There's this look of excitement on my face. There's spit coming out. And Mark comes to the door, 8, 9 o'clock at night. It's raining, it's dark. His neighbour's in this frenzy. I'm like, Mark, you've got money. I've got time and energy. Let's get a property portfolio. Let's build a portfolio together. By the way, asterisk, not the way to do it. But I'm like, Mark, let's do it. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, we could get property. Anyway, I'm going to cut a long story short. Guess what he said to start with? He said, no. He said, I don't want to give this lunatic £100,000. But let's cut the long story short. I have persistence. We get into a proper conversation in daylight hours, and we start to talk about this. And about 2 to 3 weeks later, he goes, do you know what? I'm in. I'll put the money in. Aaron, you put the time and effort in, and let's go build a property portfolio together. He's in. Okay? Now remember, just remember this for later on, what experience did I have at that time? Because you're sat here going, no one's going to give me money. But what experience did I have? I'd read a book and I had some energy about it. I asked with energy. I didn't even ask sensibly, intelligently. Later on in this video series, I'll teach you how to ask intelligently. I'll teach you how to ask so it just flows to you. These days, by the way, how much money do I raise from other people every year? Over £20 million a year. And I've done that consistently for years now. People investing into our done-for-you service. But that's not what this video is about. But he puts in his £100,000. So now we've got £100,000. We've got me excited and full of energy. I've read Rich Dad to Poor Dad, which, by the way, is a concept book. It doesn't give you the detail. It doesn't tell you exactly how to do this. It teaches you the concept brilliantly. But it doesn't give you the details. So now I've got the concepts. I'm like, let's go. So just like I was in a hurry running around to his house, I go start buying some houses with this money to build us an amazing portfolio. Guess what happens? I don't have the knowledge to buy these houses. So we've got his money, we've got my time and effort going in, we've got no experience at the table. So guess what happens? First house we buy, I buy from a property sourcer, okay? You may or may not know that phrase. Back then, no one knew the phrase. I definitely didn't know what one was. But they're like, we've got this vendor, they're happy to sell the house at a discount. They just want to stay living in the house for the next 6 months at a cheaper rate. Here's the tenancy that they've signed, but you can get it for a discount. You'll lose money over the 6 months, but then they'll move out and you'll make loads of money and you got it at a discount. I'm like, this is amazing. There's deals like this. I'll have it. And we buy that house. Once we buy it and we complete, I go meet the vendors. I go, oh, hi there. And the vendors, by the way, have lived in the house for 50 years. They sold the house to pay for their golden wedding anniversary, to go on a dream cruise. So that's why they sold the house to us. And by the way, the saucer ripped them off so badly, they didn't even complete after the cruise. So they missed the cruise. They still ended up selling the house at discount. The saucer had totally ripped them off, but because he's a man of his word, I said I would sell the house, so he still does. But when I turn up, I say, oh, you're moving out in 6 months, aren't you? They go, no, what do you mean? We were told we could live here forever. The saucers told them they can live here forever and then tricked them into signing a 6-month tenancy. So I think they're going to move out. I can't morally get them to move out now. So now me and Mark, the first property we've got, is going to lose us money for the rest of this couple's lives. Every month we're going to be losing money. Bad property number one. Let me share another story with you. One of the early properties we buy, because the first 10 are a disaster basically, but one of the other early properties we buy some HMOs. 4 HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, okay? And these HMOs are all in Scarborough, which is where I lived at the time. And I live in Cheshire now, in Wilmslow, Cheshire, which is just south of Manchester, but we're in Scarborough, which is where my head office is based. And we buy 4 houses of multiple occupation, different areas of Scarborough. And these got different amounts of people in them. Now, if you picture the scene, it's a Saturday night and the nightclub's full. And in the nightclub are some rowdy groups of young men. And one of them accidentally turns around with a pint in the hand. You can't picture the scene right now these days, can you? Because we're not allowed to do this, but back then you could. And they turn around and the pint of beer bangs into the other person and the pint goes all over them. And these are young, full of adrenaline young men. So this one turns around and squares up to them. What are you throwing your beer on me? Didn't throw my beer. And this argument ensues and this scuffle ensues between the groups of guys. And the bouncers throw them all out, okay? And they go their separate ways. They go home, okay? Now, we don't know anything about this. And you go, what's this got to do with property? Mark wakes up on Sunday morning. And Sunday morning, he wakes up and he turns his phone on or picks his phone up. He's had it on silent. And there are at least 30 missed calls. 30 missed calls. And he starts to listen to some of the messages. It's like, Mark, you need to get down here urgently. The property's been smashed up. So he rushes down to one of our HMOs. And sure enough, in the night, a group of men had come round to the HMO and looking for one of the men in there and had smashed the joint up. They've smashed up our Sleeps 10 HMO. They've caused £30,000 worth of damage. 4 of our tenants leave instantly. They don't feel safe, I understand. They leave instantly. So we lose 4 tenants overnight and we've got £30,000 worth of damage. And this is unbelievable. This is devastating. But if you fast forward the story a few hours, Mark's dealing with this for a lot of the day, and then eventually he sees that there's other messages on his phone, and his phone's still been ringing. He's like, what else can they be? Loads of other messages. He doesn't get a load of messages, Mark. So he picks up the phone again and listens to some more messages, and it's like, Mark, you need to come down to our house. It's been smashed up. And he's like, that's from someone who lives in one of our other houses. So he's like, this is really weird. So he drives down to the other house that we have, the other HMO, and the place is being smashed up. And he's like, what's happened? He says, a load of young men with metal bars and everything came in and smashed the place up. And 3 of the tenants have now left and aren't coming back. A 4th eventually leaves. And there's about £15,000 worth of damage to this HMO. What had happened? How unlucky can you get? That scuffle that happened on that Saturday night, those 2 groups of people, when they left the nightclub, one of them managed to find out where the other one lived. And they went and smashed up the joint, 30,000 of damage. That person happened to live in one of our houses. When the person came back, he wasn't there at the time, and found the damage and found that they'd been to smash up his house, He puts the word out, finds out where the other one lived. The other one lived in one of our other properties. Can you believe it? So they then went with their crew down to our other property and smashed up our other property. The summary is, me and Mark, by Sunday night, have £45,000 worth of damage to our properties. We've lost 8 tenants overnight of the 15 tenants across the 2 properties. And these guys just walk off, and we've had the joint smashed up. HMOs from that point onwards were not my favourite investment strategy. Now, were we unlucky? Yes. But did we buy our HMOs in the right place? No. Did we have the right tenants? No. Did we know the rules to put in place to buy the right ones? No. So that's an HMO story. Let me just tell you one final kind of horror story. What I want you to get, by the way, I'm not telling you these horror stories to stop you from doing this. I'm telling you these stories so that you get the warning. If you do this in an uneducated way, if you don't do this in the right way, this can really hurt you. The third house I'm going to tell you about is a property that I bought in Chapeltown, Leeds. Now, again, I'm so excited. There's an auction going on in Leeds. Leeds was about 60 miles drive away from me. And there's an auction going on in Leeds. I'm like, I look at the deal in the auction catalogue. I'm like, this is amazing. This is like £21,000 to buy this property, but they've split it into 2 kind of flats within one house, and it's going to rent out and make me about £7,000-8,000 a year. I'm like, this is a 30% plus return on investment. This is unbelievable. That's without the house going up in value. So I'm like, I'm going to bid for this. I'm going to buy it. So I don't even go look at the property. Total novice mistake. Don't go look, and I start bidding. And I win the bid at auction, like for £21,000, I buy this house. I'm like, this is amazing. So I get the keys 4 weeks later, I've got the property, and I write to the tenants. Say, all you need to do is go down to the housing benefit office, tell them I'm the landlord instead of the previous landlord, they'll pay me, and everyone's happy. Please will you do that? Sure enough, no rent comes in. Sure, I start to try and ring these tenants with the phone numbers I've got. One number's dead, the other number they don't reply, ever. I'm like, a few weeks pass, and I'm like, I'm busy with my job. By the way, I finally got my mortgage business working really, really well. Within another 6 months, it was doing amazingly well. That's going great, cool. But now I'm busy with my job. I've got this property portfolio I'm trying to build, and I'm not finding the time. I don't know if you've ever had that situation where you know that building this portfolio is going to help you. You know that property is the right thing to do. You know it's a great asset class, but time gets in the way. I meet thousands of people every year that their story's the same. Their story is, in the last 5-10 years, I've bought 1, 2, or 3. I know I should be doing this, but I don't get it done because they don't commit, they don't make the decision, they don't drive it through. So I'm trying to do this alongside my job. Eventually, we get a few weeks in, and I'm like, I'm going to have to go. So I get in the car, and I drive down to Chapeltown, Leeds, and I've got in the car with me my son Adam, who back then was maybe 6, 7 years old, and he's in the front seat alongside me, and we arrive and pull up in Chapeltown. Now, many of you won't know Chapeltown, but to give you a feel, I get to the top of the street, and there's kind of gangs of people, adult gangs, not kids, gangs of people on the corner that look pretty rough to me, and I drive down the road to the property, and I pull up outside, and there are bars over the windows. So you've got the window of the house, and it's got bars against every single window to stop people breaking in. And I'm like, this is scary. To the point where I'm like, do I leave my son Adam locked in the car because I don't know what's going to be behind the door in the house? So do I leave him here in this scary environment, but these gangs might come down the road? Or do I take him in? And I'm like, totally torn. And I'm like, but I'm here, but I've got to go in. I've driven so far. So I lock him in the car. I said, don't move, don't let anybody in. And I lock him in the car. And I go up to the door, and I'm knocking on the door, and no one's answering. Eventually, somebody kind of answers the door, and they're in a total haze, and they wander back off upstairs. And I come in, and I think, well, I'll go to the ground floor flat first. So I knock on the door to go into the ground floor flat, and it's full of needles. Totally abandoned, and totally full of needles. And by the way, I've never done drugs. I don't know what drugs are. I don't know what flipping needles are, but I can see there's needles. And I'm like, this must be drug stuff, is it? I'm totally naive. I go upstairs, and in the upstairs space, I find the lounge area of this upstairs space. And sat in this lounge space are 6 big, massive guys. And I walk in, and there's this haze of smoke in the room, and this smell that I haven't really smelled before back then, and everybody is mellow, apart from me. I'm frantic about Adam outside, but everybody's mellow, and I'm going, who's Richard? Who's Richard? Because Richard's the tenant. And they're like, eventually, I'm Richard, man. It's me. I'm like, Richard, it's good to meet you. I'm Aaron. I'm trying to get this conversation out of it. I'm like, Richard, all I need you to do tomorrow morning, go down to Housing Benefit, tell them that I'm the landlord, not the other landlord. Here's the letter. Will you do that? Will you do that? Yeah, man. Tomorrow, man. They are stoned. They are totally stoned. I didn't know what stoned was back then. I still don't actually personally know. But anyway, so I'm leaving the house. I'm like, he's never going to do that. So I've got a derelict downstairs full of needles, and I've got the upstairs full of druggies or marijuana or whatever they're on. And I get back to Adam, and thank goodness he's safe still in the car. And I drive away. I'm like, what am I going to do? So I drive back to Scarborough, 60 miles away. I'm not sure what to do. And I'm still not sure a couple of weeks later. One Saturday night, I get a phone call. A bit like Mark's phone call, but my phone rings. It's the house phone. I answer it. They go, it's the fire brigade in Leeds. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, okay. Do you own this property? I'm like, yeah. They're like, it's just to let you know that there's been a big party there, a drugs party, and they've set it on fire and it's burned down. Okay. And I'm like, what do I do? There's no point driving over because it's already burnt down. I can't put it out. What do you need me to do? Everybody's safe, but it's burnt down. This is a disaster. I've now got what was meant to be making me 30% return on investment and going up in value is now a shell burnt down, yeah, and has not made me a penny for months. It's a total disaster. Okay. Now, let's finish off the story on a good note. I was lucky enough, but it was total fluke because I bought in the rising market. And this is why I want you to get, if you're uneducated going into this next 6-12 months, it's really dangerous. It's really dangerous. I got away with it because I bought in the rising market. So I ended up going, I can't even do anything with this property. I'd be happy to just sell it for £5,000 and get out. So I put the property back up for sale in the auction, but because the market's risen, I don't even know back then that markets rise and fall and how they rise. Because the market's risen, it ends up selling for £22,000. And I get a £6,000 insurance payout, which was a rip-off, but that's what they give me. I end up with £28,000 when it cost me £21,000 to get in. Pay a bit of interest on my loan. I've made a bit of profit out of my nightmare deal. But that isn't normal. That isn't normal. It's just a nice ending to the story. So the point I'm wanting you to get here is that if you do not buy the right property in the right area at the right time, this definitely does not work. Property investing does not work. And the world is full of people who go, property didn't work for me. I've got one or two or it hasn't worked. But what I want you to get is what happened next. Here's what happened next. I've bought 10 houses. They've lost me a few £100 to a few £1,000. In fact, it's Mark's money. So it's lost Mark and us jointly that money. But what I get furious about is learning what to do better, learning how to do it better. I was so close to quitting. There was an event I went to once, and I won't go right into the event detail, but I'm at that event, and I'm at the back of the room, 50 people in the room, rammed in a small space. And I'm at the back of the room, and I'm about to quit. I'm about to walk out and sell up. But the speaker comes on, and they were such a gift to me. They were such a blessing. And they come on, and they say, do you know what? I had nightmares. My first 5 years were a disaster. My first 5 houses were a disaster. I'm like, he's speaking to me. That's my life. That's what I've created. He says, do you know what? He went on to say, the speaker, do you know what? In the last year, I've bought 50 properties or something like that. 50 properties in a year. I'm like, and he said, all with other people's money. I'm like, what? This is amazing. And what I want you to understand is, and he shares this story, he says, what I want you to understand is if you take nothing else from the talk, and this is for you, if you take nothing else from this video, there's even better content to come. But he says to me, if you take nothing else from this talk, is what you need to understand is that other people have been on this journey before. Other people have done this successfully before, but what do we do in the UK? It's like us guys in the UK. We get a new delivery from IKEA, and someone's saying, why don't you read the instructions? But what do? You take it all out of the box and you try and put it together. And you go, why the heck doesn't it work? It's IKEA's fault. You didn't follow the path. You didn't follow the steps that they've laid out for you that tell you exactly how to succeed. If you find somebody who is already world class at this, either from somewhere in the world or somewhere in the UK, and you copy step by step by step exactly what they do, and they're world class, you'll get outstanding results. But guess what? If you try and do it yourself, or you copy from your friend who's got 2 or 3, and without being disrespectful, you may have 2 or 3, you're still average at something, aren't you? You're still very average at it. If you learn from someone who's average at something, you're going to get poor results. Poor results. And then you'll quit, or then it'll cause fallouts at home, or then you'll lose money, just like I got poor results. I even got 10 lots of poor results because I had that lump of money from Mark. So I learn about what's called mastery. Mastery is finding the best in the world, the best in the UK, and copying it. I learn about mastery, and I start to put together what I call my golden rules. These are the golden rules that make sure you only ever buy world-class properties. How valuable are they? So I create these golden rules. I take what I've learned from this mastery, and I learn from the best I can find in the UK, and we buy 7 more houses over the next year. 7 houses. Bear in mind, we bought 10 that were making us no money and actually lost us money. We buy 7 houses, they make us financially free. 7 to make us financially free. And that's both of us. That's Mark and me. It gives us the opportunity, if we want, to never work again. And it wasn't we needed 17. It was those 7 right ones. The 10 wrong ones weren't serving us. 7 houses. Now, when I share this story with people, they're like, Aaron, what are the golden rules? Can you give me the golden rules? Because if I follow those, I can do the same. And I want to share with you those golden rules. These golden rules allow you to build a property portfolio over the next 2 years that will make you at least £50,000 of passive income per year for the rest of your life, regardless of your starting point. Regardless of your starting point. How cool is that? So I get you want me to share with you the golden rules, and I will in time. I will in time. But before I share those with you, what I really want you to get is the 3 critical elements that must be at the table to successfully invest. I hope you've got your pen and paper, you're writing this stuff down. The 3 critical elements that must be at the table to successfully invest. What are they? Let me throw the image up on the screen. There are 3 things that have to be at the table. The first is there has to be money. There's got to be money. If you don't have money to invest in property, you can't do it. You need money. The second is there has to be time. Somebody has to put the time in. That is time spent looking for the properties, time spent negotiating on them, time spent learning to look for them and negotiate them, time spent sorting the solicitor and the mortgage, time spent refurbishing it, time spent managing the property. So there has to be time. I'm sure you get that. Money and time. What's the third critical element? The third one is so often missing, and it was missing in my first 10 houses, wasn't it? The third one is experience. There has to be experience at the table as well. To successfully invest in property, you need time, money, and experience. And maybe that's missing for you right now. So I want us to take some action now. I want you to start to think about this, okay? To successfully invest, you need to be a 10 out of 10 at each of these 3 elements. You want to be scoring 10 out of 10 on all of them. Now, you can wait until you've saved up all the money you need. So you can wait. You can wait and do it when you're 70, but that's crazy. You're not going to do that. So what you need to do is you need to work out, where are you a 10 and where are you not a 10? And then you've got to make a decision. You've either got to make a decision to get committed and get this done. I'm going to get my education, my experience up to a 10. And you've got to do it smartly with mastery, haven't you? You've got to find the right person to teach you and show you how to do that. So you do it today, not when you're 70. Or you've got to learn how to raise the money. If you haven't got the money, you need to learn how to raise the money and go raise the money and get the money piece to a 10 as quickly as you can, but effectively, efficiently, not so it takes you 20 years to find the money. You want to get it first time or second time of asking. Yeah? And that's choice number 1, is you can learn and you can upskill and get upskilled as fast as you can. Or you learn how to work out your bits of the jigsaw. So you score yourself out of 10 at each of these things, and then you go find somebody else where your scores match up. So where, you might have a load of time to bring to the party, but you've got no time, no money and experience. Wouldn't it be a great matchup for you if there was somebody else who had the money and the experience but no time? Because I meet people all the time. They've got money sat in the bank. These days it's earning them 0%. No return on their money sat in the bank, and yet it's been sat there for 5 years. And then the next morning, or the same day in the same room, I'll meet somebody else who's got 40 hours a week, and they might have all the experience. They might have 40 hours a week and loads of experience, but no money. Get together, get this done. 50% of lots of something is worth a lot more than 100% of nothing, because you never get there. So there's decisions to make. But where does this start? It starts with you scoring yourself out of 10 at each of these areas. What I'd like to ask you to do is score yourself for time. How much time do you have to put into this? Do you have 40 hours a week? Do you have 1 hour a week? Do you have 5 hours a week? What's the time that you've got to put into this? And then score yourself out of 10 on money. 10 out of 10 means you've got loads of money. 0 out of 10 means you've got no money. So score yourself out of 10. And I get it's subjective. I know those detailed geeks like me want to go, well, what's the scale, Aaron? Just score yourself roughly out of 10. How do you feel on this? Okay? And then look at experience. Is your experience low or is it high? Score yourself out of 10 on the experience curve. Okay? Now, in this webinar series, I'm going to show you how you can build a portfolio within the next 2 years that will bring you in £50,000 per annum of passive income, regardless of your start point. I don't care if you've got 3 zeros right now. I've worked with students with 3 zeros and showed them exactly how to get to a portfolio that makes them £50,000 per annum, regardless of the start point, provided they have the right education, the right support, and the right accountability. But it starts with you working out where your scores are. It starts with you working out where your gaps are. If you don't know you've got a gap, you can't fill the gap, can you? So let's work out where your gaps are. And remember, I said this is part of a 4-part video series. So you're going to work out where your gaps are and you're going to get it written down. Okay? Then you've got from last time, your goal that you're going to create at least £50,000. That came from video 1. And then you know where your gaps are. And guess what I'm going to do in videos 3 and 4? I'm going to start to help you see how you fill some of these gaps. How do you find the money that you need to invest? Because all of us run out of money at some point. None of us are a 10, are we? Because if you've got £10 million to invest, which most of us won't have, you've got £10 million to invest, there's still going to be a deal that you can buy after you've spent £10 million. Okay? So let's learn to raise all the money that we need. Let's learn to find all the properties we need. And in videos 3 and 4, I'm going to teach you the skills, the simple skills, once you commit to mastery, to be able to raise the money you need and to get the properties that you need. So I'm going to be releasing the next video in a couple of days' time. Okay? Remember, this is all about building yourself a portfolio. The housing market about to drop. It's about building yourself a portfolio at the best time to buy in over a decade, regardless of your start point, learning how you personally can build a passive income from property of £50,000 a year within the next 2 years. So you want to look out for the next video, which I'll be sending you in just a couple of days' time. In the meantime, look after your family, stay safe, invest with knowledge, invest with confidence, create financial freedom. I'll see you soon.